The Galactic Council chamber was silent. The decree had been issued. The war was over. At least, that was the consensus. Representatives from the most powerful alien races sat in their high-backed chairs, their expressions a mix of relief and triumph. The Zari High Strategist, a towering figure with luminous blue eyes, was the first to speak. "It is done," he declared. "Humanity has suffered catastrophic losses. They are broken. Their fleets lie in ruin, their homeworld crippled. The ceasefire is a mere formality." A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. A black warlord clicked his mandibles. "Their surrender was inevitable. They are too primitive to withstand the might of the Dominion." A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the chamber, revealing the devastation Earth had endured: cities reduced to rubble, smoking craters where thriving metropolises once stood, lifeless ships drifting through the void like corpses. "The war is over," the High Strategist continued, leaning forward. "We shall allow the survivors to exist under Dominion rule. Those who resist will be corrected." There was no dissent. No argument. The decision had been made. On the bridge of the UNS Retribution, Captain Elias Carter studied the transmission, his expression unreadable. His uniform was stained with the sweat and grime of war, his jaw clenched tight. Around him, the crew remained silent, waiting. "Play it again," he ordered. The message repeated, "The Galactic Council's decree, cold and absolute, the war is over. Humanity must surrender. Resistance is futile." Carter let the silence stretch before speaking. "They think we're done." His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of something unbreakable. Commander Rain, his second-in-command, exhaled sharply. "They believe what they want to believe." Carter turned to her. "They've underestimated us from the start." A ripple of grim amusement passed through the bridge. The truth was evident to everyone aboard the Retribution: humanity was nowhere near finished. The Galactic Council saw only the wreckage, the casualties, the planets lost. They didn't see the hidden fleets, the war factories still churning out weapons in asteroid belts, the black sites developing new technology. They didn't see the soldiers still standing, they didn't see what humanity had become. "Status on the fleet?" Carter asked. "Scattered," Rain admitted. "We took heavy losses, but our core forces remain intact. The Zari think we're crippled because they control the major battle zones. What they don't realize is, we let them take those zones," Carter finished. "They've overextended." A shift passed through the bridge, the tension sharpening into something dangerous. A comms officer turned. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Kova. High-priority encryption. Patch it through." The display shifted, revealing Admiral Kova's hardened face. Leader of humanity's surviving forces, her expression was fierce. "The ceasefire is a trap," she said without preamble. "The Dominion expects us to kneel. They don't realize all they've done is give us the opening we need." Carter nodded. "I assume the counteroffensive is still greenlit?" "More than that." Kova leaned forward, eyes blazing. "It's time to push harder. We've been playing defense for too long." A slow, dark smile formed on Carter's face. "Understood. The Retribution is ready." The comms cut, and Carter turned to his crew. "Prep all combat units. Make sure every ship in our fleet knows, we're not stopping." The Council had ordered a ceasefire, they forgot to ask humanity if it agreed. Beneath the ruins of London and an underground command center lit by dim emergency lights, a group of resistance leaders gathered around a holographic war map. General Aisha Malik traced a finger over the galactic chart. "The Zari have shifted their fleets into occupation mode. Their warships are holding key systems, expecting us to surrender." "We won't," growled Colonel Dawson, his voice thick with exhaustion. "But how do we make them regret thinking we would?" A voice spoke from the shadows. "We strike where they believe us weakest." Eyes turned to Dr. Elias Novak, one of humanity's top AI warfare specialists. He adjusted his glasses, his face impassive. "The Dominion has underestimated not just our will, but our ability to adapt. They see us as primitives, as brutes. What they fail to understand is that our technology has evolved alongside this war." Aisha narrowed her eyes. "What are you proposing?" A full-scale cyber warfare operation. AI infiltration of their warships, orbital stations, and communication networks. The Zari rely on centralized control. If we break that, Dawson slammed a fist against the table. We can throw their entire military into chaos. Novak nodded. Exactly. Give me 24 hours, and I can embed an AI worm into their fleet coordination systems. When the time comes, we flip the switch. Their fleets go blind, their orders scrambled, their weapons offline. A slow realization passed through the room. The first move in humanity's counteroffensive wouldn't be a battle, it would be a reckoning. Aisha's lips curled into a smirk. Then let's make sure they never see it coming. Beyond Mars, hidden in the asteroid belt, the remnants of humanity's greatest warships lay in wait. These were not the battered remains of a broken fleet, they were ghosts. Weapons sharpened in silence. Among them was the Horizon Spear, a warship unlike any other. Built in secret, its hull was laced with advanced armor and prototype weaponry, designed specifically to counter Dominion technology. In the command chamber, Fleet Marshal Devon stood with his arms crossed, watching the final preparations. Engineers worked in silent efficiency, loading payloads, calibrating experimental rail cannons capable of tearing through Zari warships in a single shot. Is the fleet combat ready? Devon asked. A nearby officer nodded. Fully armed and operational. We have enough firepower to wipe out an entire sector. Devon exhaled, staring at the display of enemy-controlled territories. Then we wait for the signal. New York City, now a graveyard of steel and concrete. The wind howled through the shattered remains of skyscrapers. The skyline, once a testament to human ambition, was now a monument to devastation. Below, survivors moved like shadows, scavenging, rebuilding, refusing to give in. Lena Torres knelt behind a makeshift barricade, rifle in hand, scanning the ruins. Once an engineer, now a soldier, the war had not given her a choice. Beside her, Colonel Mathis tightened his grip on a repurposed Solarian plasma rifle. His uniform was tattered, his face lined with exhaustion. They think we're done, he muttered, watching the skies. They think we'll kneel. Lena's eyes remained on the Zari patrol in the distance, their armored figures sweeping the wreckage. Her finger tightened on the trigger. Mathis exhaled. Let them think it. A signal clicked in her earpiece. Across the ruins, hidden resistance fighters readied their weapons. Silence was replaced with gunfire. The Zari didn't even have time to scream. The Galactic Council had declared a ceasefire. Humanity had declared war. They won't see it coming. Devon nodded. So, what happens when we flip the switch? Novak's lips curled into a grim smile. The same thing that always happens when a predator loses its sight. He turned away, eyes locked on the countdown timer. It panics. Aboard the Zari flagship Vorn, Supreme Commander Errol stood before the main tactical display, watching the remnants of Earth smolder. His advisors murmured among themselves, congratulating each other on a decisive victory. Yet, Errol remained silent. Something felt wrong. The humans had fought fiercely, more than he had anticipated. He had expected a struggle, but not this unyielding defiance. The Galactic Council had declared a ceasefire, but Errol knew humans did not obey orders from those they did not fear. An officer approached, bowing his head. Supreme Commander, long-range scanners detect no large-scale fleet movements. Humanity is silent. Errol narrowed his eyes. That is precisely what concerns me. The officer hesitated. Shall I notify the council? Errol let the silence stretch before replying. No. The council believes this war is over. Let them believe it. His gaze drifted to the vast emptiness of space, where humanity's fleet should have been. They will learn their mistake soon enough. On the bridge of the Retribution, Carter read the latest reports. The resistance was holding. The fleet was regrouping. The AI virus was ready. Humanity had suffered, Earth burned, cities fell, but nothing had broken them. Across the galaxy, in occupied cities and hidden bunkers, humanity sharpened its weapons. Engineers toiled over blueprints for war machines. Scientists refined technologies designed to turn the tide. Soldiers trained in the darkness, waiting for the command to strike. They were not defeated. They were becoming something else. Carter leaned back in his chair, his eyes cold and unwavering. They had lost everything. Now, they had nothing left to lose. The Dominion occupation was ruthless. Entire cities were repurposed into logistical hubs, their once proud skyscrapers now draped with Zari banners. Alien patrols roamed the streets, scanning for signs of rebellion. They believed humanity was broken, that the resistance was a fading ember rather than a rising inferno. They were wrong. Beneath the ruins of Berlin, resistance fighters navigated dimly lit tunnels, weapons in hand. The war had forged them into something new, not traditional soldiers, but hunters. Insurgents who struck from the shadows and vanished before the enemy could react. General Aisha Malik adjusted her earpiece, listening to the final confirmations. The operation was set. Weeks of intelligence gathering had revealed the Dominion's weak points. The time had come to remind the occupiers that humanity did not submit. She turned to her team. We hit the convoy at the checkpoint. No survivors. A silent nod passed between them. There was no hesitation, no fear. They had all lost too much to feel anything but purpose. Above them, Zari forces continued their routine, oblivious to the death lurking beneath their feet. The attack was swift. Explosions tore through the convoy as human operatives emerged from the wreckage, cutting down surviving guards. Plasma fire lit up the night, but the resistance fought with a ferocity the Zari had never anticipated. Within minutes, the supply point was in flames. By the time Dominion reinforcements arrived, the humans were gone. Similar strikes unfolded across occupied territories. Fuel depots sabotaged. Communication hubs disabled. Convoys reduced to smoldering wrecks. The Zari had declared victory, but they were beginning to understand, this war was far from over. Humanity was no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for vengeance. Aboard the Iron Fang, Admiral Kova reviewed the latest reports. The Dominion's logistical network was unraveling. Resistance cells had received one directive: disrupt, destroy, destabilize. The Galactic Council had believed in total conquest, assuming humanity would accept defeat. They had never fought an enemy like this before. The Dominion was accustomed to crushing centralized powers, eliminating leadership and watching the structure collapse. They didn't understand what it meant to fight an enemy that refused to break. Harlow studied the data beside her. They're diverting forces to deal with the resistance. Kova nodded. Good. That means they're reacting. She tapped a control panel, bringing up a new map: hidden shipyards, secret research facilities, black sites where humanity's brightest minds worked in secrecy. With each passing day, the Dominion's grip weakened, and humanity's arsenal grew. We give them too many fires to put out, Kova said. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late. Deep within a classified research station on Titan, engineers and scientists worked tirelessly. The facility had been built in secret long before the war and remained undetected beneath layers of rock and ice. Dr. Elias Novak moved between workstations, reviewing test results. The AI virus had been refined. No longer just a tool of disruption, it was a weapon of annihilation. Devon approached. Final simulation complete. Once deployed, their entire fleet coordination system collapses within 2 minutes. Novak scanned the results. Every calculation confirmed the same truth: the Dominion's greatest strength, their technological superiority, would become their downfall. How soon can we launch? Whenever you give the order. Novak nodded. Then we wait for the signal. On the bridge of the Retribution, Carter watched as final combat preparations were made. Every surviving warship had been refitted, upgraded, modified for the battle ahead. The Dominion believed humanity had stopped fighting. That the silence was surrender. It wasn't. It was strategy. The ceasefire had given them time to prepare, to evolve. Carter activated the fleet-wide channel. Across dozens of ships, hundreds of thousands of soldiers and crew members listened. We have spent too long in the shadows. Too long rebuilding while our enemies believed us broken. That time is over. He let the silence stretch. The Dominion declared this war over. They were wrong. It begins now. Far beyond Dominion sensor range, hidden in the void between planets, the remnants of the Terran fleet lay in wait. Warships retrofitted with stolen Dominion technology powered down to mask their signatures. Disguised as debris, each vessel carried a single order. Wait for the signal. Aboard the Vorn, Supreme Commander Eerily sensed the shift before the alarms blared. His screens glitched. Vital fleet data vanished. Communications went silent. Then, without warning, weapon systems locked up. Engines failed. The Dominion fleet had been blinded in an instant. Panic spread across the bridge. Then, from the darkness, humanity struck. Warships emerged from the void, engines burning as they tore through the Dominion fleet. Kinetic rounds shredded hulls. Fighters wove through the chaos, dismantling the enemy piece by piece. For the first time, the Dominion was losing. On the surface, resistance fighters watched the sky burn. Lena Torres stood among them, gripping her rifle as Dominion patrols looked up in confusion. The masters of this world had become its prey. Humanity had returned. Their warships were falling. Colonel Matthews wasted no time. That's the signal, move. Across every occupied city, the resistance rose. Hidden caches of weapons were unsealed, ambushes were sprung, and Dominion troops, already thrown into disarray by the loss of their fleet, found themselves under siege by an enemy they had assumed was beaten. Every human who had been forced to kneel, to endure, to survive, now stood and fought. And they did not fight for survival, they fought for revenge. Eerily staggered as the Veilborn trembled under another explosion. His flagship, the pride of the Dominion, was being torn apart. Snarling, he forced his way to a secondary console, attempting to override the virus manually. Nothing responded. Entire decks had gone dark, damage reports flooded in, catastrophic losses, entire divisions annihilated before they could even react. The humans had not just survived, they had prepared for this. A transmission cut through the static. Eerily turned, expecting one of his officers. Instead, a human face filled the display. Carter, captain of the Retribution, stared back at him, calm, unwavering. "I'm here to accept your surrender." Eerily bared his fangs. "You think you've won?" Carter tilted his head slightly. "I think you're out of options." Behind him, the Dominion fleet was being erased. No reinforcements were coming. No retreat was possible. The ceasefire had been a lie, a ploy to lull them into overconfidence. Humanity had never stopped fighting. They had simply been waiting for the right moment to end it. Carter's voice was quiet, absolute. "This is where it ends." Eeryle's hands clenched into fists. He had underestimated these creatures from the beginning, and because of that mistake, he had doomed his entire fleet. But he was Dominion. He would not kneel. With a final, furious snarl, he severed the transmission. If the humans wanted to finish this, they would have to kill him first. Carter exhaled and turned to his crew. "Then let's finish it." The final assault began. The Veilborn trembled as explosions tore through its hull. Fires raged across multiple decks, emergency sirens howling in protest. The Dominion flagship, once the unshakable symbol of their conquest, was now a dying beast, bleeding fire and steel. Eerily moved with measured purpose, ignoring the chaos around him. His officers barked desperate orders, but he already knew the truth. His fleet was lost. The humans had not just outmaneuvered them, they had dismantled them. With ruthless precision, he reached the command console, attempting to reroute power to the ship's remaining weapons. The system refused. The virus had infected everything. The ship belonged to the enemy now. A nearby officer turned to him, fear in his slitted eyes. "Supreme Commander, we must." Eeryle's blade severed his throat before the sentence could finish. Cowards did not deserve to flee. If this was to be the end of his campaign, he would meet it as a warrior. Carter stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the wreckage of the Dominion fleet scatter across the void. The once mighty armada had been reduced to burning husks. Some ships attempted to flee, but with their command network crippled, they were easy prey. Human warships hunted them down without mercy. Kova's voice came through the comms. Remaining enemy forces are surrendering or being eliminated. It's over. Carter's gaze shifted to the tactical display. One last red marker burned, the Veilborn. Damaged but still defiant. Target the flagship, he said. We finish this. Eerily watched as human warships closed in around him. Their weapons were locked, waiting. They wanted him to surrender. He bared his fangs. They would get nothing from him. He activated the manual override, bypassing the ship's failing systems. One last charge, one final act of defiance. If he was to die, he would take as many of them with him as he could. The ship's engines flared, pushing the crippled warship forward, straight at the heart of the human fleet. Alarms rang across the Retribution. He's moving on a collision course. Harlow shouted. Carter's expression remained cold. Then let's put him down. The order was given. Every weapon on the Retribution fired at once. A storm of railgun rounds, torpedoes, and laser fire tore through the Veilborn. Its armor cracked, decks ruptured, entire sections breaking apart. The Dominion flagship, once a symbol of absolute power, was being erased from existence. Eerily remained at his station, refusing to move, refusing to give them the satisfaction of his fear. His claws dug into the console, his body burning, his ship dying. He had sworn to break humanity, to bring them to their knees. Instead, they had broken him. As the final blast tore through the ship, he exhaled a single bitter breath. And then he was gone. Silence fell over the battlefield. The last Dominion warship had fallen. Their fleet, their occupation, their claim to superiority, all of it had been annihilated. Carter surveyed the wreckage. Signal all units, the battle is over. Across the fleet, cheers erupted. They had done what the galaxy deemed impossible. They had taken on an empire, and won. But Carter felt no joy. The war had cost too much. Earth still bore the scars of fire and ruin. Countless lives had been lost. And he knew one thing for certain. This was not the end. The Dominion would never forget this defeat. But neither would humanity. They had been underestimated once. It would never happen again. The officer stood stiffly as the supreme strategist fixed him with an unwavering gaze. That single battle cost us an entire fleet, 3 high command admirals, and the stability of our rule. Do you grasp the severity of this? His voice remained measured, but a sharp edge cut through the comm. The galaxy is watching. If we do not crush humanity now, others will follow their lead. He gestured toward a holographic projection, a map of Dominion-controlled space. Across it, sectors pulsed in red, each one a spark of unrest. This is their doing, Valkyr continued, his voice harder now. They have turned our empire against us. Rebellions are stirring. Our vassal states question our supremacy. If we do not act with absolute force, the flames will consume everything. A heavy silence filled the chamber. None needed to be told what must come next. A new armada would be assembled, larger, deadlier. Every resource would be funneled into humanity's extermination. This was no longer an occupation. It was a war of annihilation. On Earth, the moment the last Dominion warship fell, preparations had already begun. Humanity had won time, but not peace. Deep within hidden strongholds, engineers and scientists worked relentlessly. Factories that had once churned out consumer goods now produced weapons and warships. Every scrap of salvaged Dominion technology was reverse-engineered, improved, and integrated into the rapidly expanding human fleet. In an underground command center, Kova stood over a tactical display, surrounded by military leaders and strategists. Carter listened intently as she outlined the next steps. We can't wait for them to return, she said. If we give them time to rebuild, We'll be facing a force 10 times the size of the one we just destroyed. A grizzled general nodded. Agreed. We need to strike before they can regroup. Carter leaned forward, eyes sharp. We won't win by brute force. But we can outthink them. We'll cut off supply chains, disrupt command structures, force them to stretch their forces then. The plan took shape: covert operations, sabotage, surgical strikes deep in Dominion space. This was not just about survival. This was about shattering the Empire from within. Humanity would not wait to be hunted. They would become the hunters. The first strike was swift and devastating. A Dominion supply convoy in the Keeler system vanished without a trace. A high-ranking Zari governor was assassinated aboard his flagship. A weapons facility on the fringes of Dominion space erupted in a catastrophic chain reaction. Every attack was deliberate. Every target chosen with precision. The Dominion scrambled to respond, dispatching fleets to hunt the attackers, but humanity had learned well. They struck and disappeared before retaliation could come. For every world the Dominion controlled, humanity made them bleed. On a barren moon in neutral space, a secret meeting convened. Representatives from long-subjugated species gathered in the shadows. Some came out of desperation. Others out of curiosity. But all had heard the same rumors. The humans had done the impossible. They had broken the Dominion's hold. A frail but sharp-eyed diplomat from the SIAC consortium spoke first. If we join them, we risk everything. A warrior from the Ori Alliance grunted. If we don't, we risk extinction. The Dominion will never let us remain neutral. Silence stretched before a third voice cut through. We don't need to debate what the Dominion will do. All eyes turned as Kova stepped forward. What matters is what we do. For centuries, you have endured under their rule. Some of you have fought. Some of you have waited. But all of you have seen what happens to those who resist alone. She let the words sink in before continuing. You have seen what humanity did to them. We are not asking for your help. We are offering you something greater. She gestured around. A chance to end them. Together. One by one, the leaders exchanged glances, the weight of history pressing down on them. They had all seen the transmissions, the undeniable proof of what had transpired over Earth. The Dominion was not invincible. One by one, they pledged their allegiance. This was no longer just humanity's war. It was an uprising. Deep in the Dominion's core worlds, Valkyr received the latest reports: disrupted supply lines, planets in revolt, human ships appearing and vanishing like ghosts. They were not cowering, waiting for extermination. They were dismantling his empire. For the first time in his long career, Valkyr felt something unfamiliar. Not fear. But doubt. He clenched his fists and issued new orders. The retaliation force would be doubled, no, tripled. Humanity would drown in fire. And yet, a whisper of unease lingered in his mind. Was it already too late? The Dominion armada advanced with relentless precision. Thousands of warships spread across the void, blotting out the stars as they moved toward Earth. This was not an invasion. It was an execution. Every resource, every warship, every last measure of the Dominion's might had been summoned. Humanity's defiance would be erased from history. On the Dominion flagship, Supreme Strategist Val watched the display with cold calculation. He had studied humanity. He had learned from their unpredictability. This time, there would be no underestimation. No hesitation. Begin the bombardment the moment we enter range, he ordered. No warnings. No offers of surrender. His officers obeyed without question. Alarms blared across Earth's orbital defenses. Aboard the Retribution, Carter stood surrounded by the final remnants of humanity's fleet. Their ships were battle-worn, patched together from salvaged technology and stolen Dominion parts. The odds were impossible. But numbers had never decided humanity's fate before. Kova's voice crackled through the comms. They're deploying everything. This is it. Carter nodded. Then we give them hell. Railgun batteries ignited, flinging hypervelocity slugs toward the incoming armada. Planetary shield generators hummed, bracing for the storm. Hastily constructed warships took formation. They were outgunned. Outnumbered. But they were not outmatched. The first wave struck like a hammer. Dominion warships unleashed plasma lances and kinetic slugs, tearing through Earth's defenses. Fighters clashed in brutal dogfights. But humanity did not break. Hidden artillery stations emerged from mountains, launching projectiles that shattered Dominion cruisers. Mines detonated in pre-planned kill zones, turning enemy formations into burning wreckage. The Dominion had come for a slaughter. Instead, they had walked into a battlefield prepared for their annihilation. And then, across the Dominion fleet, chaos erupted. Explosions. Not from human weapons. From within. The uprising had begun. Across Dominion space, the species they had subjugated now struck. Shipyards burned. Supply lines collapsed. Their vast empire was fracturing from within. Valkyrs stared at the unfolding disaster in disbelief. They were supposed to crush humanity. Instead, they had lost everything. On Earth's surface, civilians looked to the sky, watching their enemies fall. Fires still burned in ruined cities, but fear had long since faded. Above, on the bridge of the Retribution, Carter took a slow breath as the last Dominion warship was torn apart. The battlefield was silent. He opened a channel to all surviving forces. It's over. Against impossible odds, humanity had done more than survive. They had won. But this was not just an ending. It was the beginning. The Dominion was broken. And the galaxy now belonged to humanity.